What's up, Wanna Coffee fam? It's Kai, and we are back, kicking off season 2, and things have slightly changed for us. We will have weekly contributions from strangers all over the world discussing various topics chosen by yours truly. And this is the first time these contributors have spoken to one another, so you are in for a real treat. Without further ado, here's Ron and Alex with The Birds and the Bees Talk.
All right, that's excellent. So the birds and the bees, it's a funny topic for so many different reasons, and for having children, I mean, I have three that are under 10, and ironically, I mean, for that to be a topic of discussion, it seems like I'm getting a lot of those questions that kind of revolve around that idea, that topic from my 10-year-old, and so it's just kind of funny. So, I guess how do we really want to approach this topic?
I mean, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is the sex talk, right? Like, mine are three. My kids are 3 and 1, so we're not having that conversation yet, at all. That doesn't even strike their brains. But I don't even recall ever having a specific moment like with my mom having the sex talk ever. I don't know. Maybe
No,
I
no, my family, we didn't either. I mean, but then again, I was obviously an adolescent teen, male that you kind of figure some stuff out on your own. But I never actually had any of that talk. I probably learned a lot of the ways that I would never want my kids to learn. It was, I think back to it, right? Because it was almost like it's like that fun trial and error. I guess it's probably the most fun trial and error project you ever figure out. But that being said, I don't. My two oldest are girls, and frankly, never having that discussion from my perspective, let alone having to have that discussion with two young girls, that could be that's going to be an interesting case because they're the curiosity, what they're seeing, they have exposure to so much more information than even we did as kids. And I mean, I'm 35, so I feel like I was just kind of at the dawn of the internet age, so to speak. But even then, information is far more simple to get your hands on now, whether it's through unofficial sources like television, if you will, or whatnot, or whatever they watch. Those are where some of these questions are coming from. And I was like, well, I guess maybe we probably should have, checked the parental controls a little bit better on whether, maybe not Disney Plus, but other sources. But just interesting. I don't even know how I want to approach that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm 31, so like you, like, yeah, I grew up like in the technology age where we had access to stuff, but not access at our fingertips like our kids do. I mean, obviously mine don't yet, but I don't think not ever really talking about it like messed me up. Like, I think I'm pretty normal. I think sex is a natural, normal thing to talk about. And for our kids my kids to eventually be curious about, yours are already there. I just had this discussion with a friend who found porn on his son's phone because he has apps where he can look. And his son's 13. And I was like, that's pretty normal. And he's like, it's not normal. And I was like, oh, well, it's normal. Like, I was like, if you had the same amount of access to porn when you were 13 that our kids do now, I said, what would you have done? He's like, oh yeah, I probably wouldn't have done anything else. And I was like, it's normal. I said, it's not necessarily always going to be like healthy. I was like, but you have to open that door and you have to have that discussion about things that you see aren't real per se. Like, that's not necessarily how things go down. But it's super weird.
To your point.
Yeah. I never talked to
Oh,
my
go ahead.
about it ever. But then one day I was like, hey, I'm going to be sexually active. She's like, hey, let's go get you some birth control. And then like that was our conversation. And we went.
You know, I fear that I'm going to be I'm going to be that stereotypical Italian dad where it's going to be like, you know, I ain't afraid to go back to prison. And I've never, you know, I've never even been in trouble with the law. But long story short, I made that comment the other day, and my daughter was like, "You were in jail." I'm like, "No, just stay away from boys. You're not dating until you're 50." But I do have those stereotypical Italian father tendencies. But I think about it where we talk about the 13-year-old who has discovered, you know, porn on their phone or whatever the app or whatever the case may be. I'm sitting there thinking it reminds me of that American Pie scene right at the beginning of American Pie, where back in our age it was, oh man, can we get the TV to unscramble at just the right amount of time? Did they forget to scramble the, you know, whatever, I think it was like channel 99 or whatever when I was a kid. And that was a real life thing. I mean, when I was a teenager, that was kind of like the, you know, we were all, if we were hanging out having sleepovers, it was kind of like the, oh, let's check it out. Let's see if they, you know, if it unscrambled. And I'm sitting there thinking back now, I'm like, wow, we were interesting. But now 13-year-olds, I'm sure they have far easier access. And it is, I'll say from a male perspective, it's relatively normal because, you know, let's be frank, right? One day you wake up and you're kind of like, oh, something's going on here. What do I do about it?
Yeah.
Now you're curious. I, this is going to get a lot of laughs if people listen to it. I'm telling you right now. I'm just going to sit there and laugh when I hear it.
Oh yeah. Um, but yeah, it's like once we got the birds and the bees talk, I was thinking and I was like, you know, I don't even think I really asked my mom about it, but it wasn't like we had like it wasn't like I really even grew up in a very conservative household where like these things were taboo. Like I said, like I was like, hey, this is gonna happen. And, you know, we just went, like, we didn't have talks about how, like, I think my mom just assumed that, like, I understood that, like, hey, don't get pregnant, be safe about it. Like, and then we just never had that conversation. And I worry about my daughter because even at 3, I can already look at her and know that this child is my karma. And everything I ever did is going to come back and bite me in the ass. And so I'm like, oh, maybe I'll send her to a convent. And she's a free spirit, and I don't ever want to kill that in her. Like, she's going to need that fire to be a woman in this world. But I'm a little worried about that one. But I also feel like her dad is going to be the one, like, leaning a shotgun on the porch. Like, if a boy comes and picks her up at his house. Like,
It's a thing. I'm telling you, I'm already overprotective. And it's even when they're getting, you know, when they're playing with their friends that have, you know, there's not even a glimmer or glisten of this kind of talk in their social life. But it's like, I don't know. You're overprotective of your daughters, and then I think that's kind of it. But it's funny how stereotypical it really can be too, because, you know, I remember my father. I mean, it wasn't a talk. It was at one point. I mean, this is well beyond the age we probably should have had the talk. It was just don't knock a girl up, and, you know, the other condition of living under his household was don't come home in the back of a police car. So those two events seem to have worked out all right. But you know, I think about it as I reflect back, even 8th grade. I mean, the closest thing I think we came to with any kind of talk was we had some gentleman come and speak to our school. You know, a guy who had contracted AIDS, and he's just like, guys, you know, guys and girls, be careful and yada yada. That was the closest thing to any type of birds and bees talk we had. And then going back to that. I'll say hypocritical or just kind of gender role, right? It's Jim Jeffries. He's got a comedy out there that, I mean, it kills me because, you know, he's kind of got the opposite thing going. It's, you know, if he's got a young son and he comes out and says, look, I don't care if you're gay or straight, go out and get as much as you want. But he goes, when I have a daughter, it's, you know, to your point, put them in a convent and hide them from everything in the world until, so it's just like, you know, I think about it from a stereotypical standpoint and just kind of that hypocritical standpoint as well, based on gender identification. But just kind of cracks me up a little as I think about it as a parent.
it weird how the conversation though, like, has really changed? Like, we were young and everyone was like, well, don't get pregnant. Like, don't get pregnant, don't get somebody pregnant. The conversation has completely changed now because there's so much more to worry about. And then there's still like, you know, especially as we have daughters, we're going to have the conversation about how to like protect themselves in unwanted sexual situations. And, you know, personally teaching my daughter, like, you don't have to be nice if you're uncomfortable. Like, you don't have to be nice. Like, you don't have to hurt their feelings. Get out of that situation. And then, of course, raising our sons to not put girls in that situation. And the conversations have changed so much, especially as we've become more open and more progressive as a society. Well, hopefully, where it's not teaching girls not to get raped, it's teaching boys not to rape. Like, the conversation has to evolve, but there's so much, and it's worrisome, especially because when your kids are on play dates that you're not there, you don't know what other kids are exposed to. And like, I wouldn't say that like our generation as millennials, I don't think that you know, everything was picture perfect, but I feel like it's even scarier now with everything at their fingertips. And
I think it's funny how, you know, I would say my wife and I are definitely more, we're, for as liberal as we are, I feel like from a almost, we have this almost conservative paranoia to some of these situations. And, you know, it's to the point of exactly that, right? I don't want to take a chance of, you know, who knows who these, if you don't know the parents. I mean, like, again, I'm not that involved with, you know, certain social events, especially since COVID hit, right? But at the end of the day, we're in an area right now where we don't really know anybody. So, you know, we moved here for my job, and I mean, from being from Chicago and you know, even going to Purdue, I have some roots in different places and different friendships. Here we have nobody. And so it's like, it's trying to get to know these people from Adam and understand, okay, you know, are these the kind of people you'd even want your kids hanging out with? And it's just such a different challenge. And you know, with exactly that, right? What if that when my daughter turns 13, is she going to find and hang out with that kid just because it's okay to hang out with a, you know, boy, not necessarily be involved in some romantic capacity, but is he going to be the kid that is so obsessed with the fact that he was able to find porn on his phone? You know what I mean? I got to worry about that stuff, you know, and it's just crazy. But putting them in making sure, I love that point, right? Making sure that, you know, both those girls are strong and know when they should be strong and how they should be strong. And I think it's also a blessing that we had our third child as a boy, because I think he's going to grow up with that respect and understanding how to respect girls. I mean, we're outnumbered. We're 3-2 in this household. So he's got to learn very well. And, you know, we'll see what ends up happening.
I've always said, like, I was like, I'll be damned that my son disrespects a woman. Like, he didn't come out of one. And like right now, being raised by just me, like, I mean, their father is absolutely involved, but like, I have primary custody. So my kids are with me a majority of the time. Like right now they're with their dad. But no, like, Asher will learn, like, he will learn to be respectful. And it might be a different, and I don't know if it's going to be a different conversation with Asher than it will be with Eve about the birds and the bees and sex. Like, and even if I'm going to be the one he comes to, he might go to his dad about that. I don't. And I think his dad has probably pretty healthy attitudes regarding that. So I'm not like real worried about it, but it's so funny. Like, I think I'm like trying to think about when my kids start asking me questions, but I never asked my parents questions, and it wasn't like my parents weren't approachable. Like, I have a very good relationship with my mom. It's just not something we ever brought up.
Yeah, yeah, me too. That's the kind of, as I reflect back, that's the interesting piece too. And even now, the relationship I have with my parents, I'm surprised that we never really took a deep look and learning at that kind of situation. And to this point, right, we've got, we want to have those relationships with our kids so that they can feel open and safe enough to come to us with, what to do and what's the consequences. Because I'm still convinced, even at our age, right, you're going to have new experiences where you don't know what the consequences might end up becoming. And, taking a rational approach might help. And I think, evaluating something so that they have the knowledge to make the right decision for them, eventually that's going to be the best thing
I had an interesting.
for them to understand in life. And from a male person, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you can continue. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, we circled back to the idea of that there's so much more to worry about than, from a male perspective of knocking a girl up or vice versa, and there's so much more to worry about. You know, you also, let's put it that way, right? I mean, you don't want to be put in a position where, from a female perspective, you're put in a position you don't want to be in. And we got to make sure our kids are strong enough to understand that, but we also want to make sure that we don't put our male, our sons in a position where they can put themselves in a, troublesome spot because, they don't understand what the consequences are of doing something wrong, whether it's from natural perspective or even legal perspective, right? Nobody wants that. And,
Mm-mm.
living with consequences, I think, has to be a big part of any discussion we have with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interesting conversation the other day where my friend was like, I'm not telling my kid anything I ever did. And I was like, well, I'm not going to lie to Eve about it. Or both kids, I'm not going to lie to them about it. They might not get the nitty gritty details that I was drunk out of my mind. But it was with somebody I loved very much. They're not going to get the super sketchy details when I was a rebellious teenager, but I'm not going to lie and be like, oh no, wait until marriage. Well, they know I was never married to their dad. So, they're gonna figure that one out. So no, I'm not lying. I mean, they might not maybe when they're adults, we'll have the other conversation, but as kids, no, I'm not going to lie to them, but, I might frame it differently than the situation where it occurred, but.
Yeah, withholding certain truths is okay. I'm okay with that as long as the concept. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Right? It's make sure they understand realism. Don't make it something that is impossible to conceive. So yeah.
Yeah, we have about 30 seconds. So, left in our 18 minutes.
Final thoughts?
I don't know. It's just, that's an interesting topic. It's funny. But I think we actually took a very serious turn there as opposed to what I thought it was going to be. I'll go ahead and stop.
Now that was funny. That was quite enjoyable. You guys had lots to offer, especially as parents to young and beautiful babies. Thanks again for the conversation. That's it for us, folks. Catch us next week for a brand new episode with brand new contributors. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WannaCoffeePod. That's WannaCoffeePod. I'm your host, Kai, and let's wanna coffee next week. Cheers. Oh my God. Orange is not my new black.